The corridor of the Royal Academy was long, cold, and filled with silence. Golden walls shimmered with dragon symbols, and giant torches burned with blue flame. But no one dared to walk there after sunset. The workers called it the Silent Corridor. It was the private path of the Dragon Queen's only son, Prince Carthar, the child everyone feared. Many said he was cursed. They said whoever looked into his glowing red eyes would see their worst nightmare. Others whispered that his touch could melt steel. So even the bravest guards avoided him. They bowed when he passed, but none met his gaze. The corridor was always clean, but not because anyone wanted to clean it. Robots and drones did most of the work, except for one human janitor named Eli. Eli was an ordinary man from a far-off human colony. His wife had died during the war, leaving him to raise his little daughter Leah alone. He worked 2 jobs, slept only 4 hours a night, and still smiled every morning when his daughter hugged him. He had come to the academy not for honor or money, but just to feed his child. That night, Eli was assigned to clean the silent corridor. The other workers looked at him with pity. "Refuse it," one whispered. "No one goes there after dark," another warned. But Eli only adjusted the strap of the baby carrier on his chest. His daughter, already asleep, snuggled against him. "I'll be quick," he said softly, and pushed the cleaning cart forward. As he entered the corridor, the air changed. It felt heavy, thick, almost alive. The torches flickered like eyes watching him. Every step echoed across the golden floor. Eli tried not to look at the tall dragon statues that lined the walls. Each one looked ready to move. He hummed a gentle tune for his daughter, pretending not to be afraid. Then a voice spoke. It was soft, almost like a whisper carried on wind. "You shouldn't be here." Eli froze. He turned slowly. At the far end of the corridor stood a boy, scales of silver blue, eyes like burning coals, small wings folded against his back. The Dragon Prince. Eli's heart raced. Every story he'd heard screamed in his head, "Run! Don't look! Don't speak!" But his legs didn't move. The prince was not angry. He looked lonely. His claws clicked on the floor as he stepped closer. "They always run away," the boy said quietly. "They look at me and then they leave." Eli swallowed hard. "I'm not running," he said. The prince tilted his head. "Why?" Eli smiled gently, though his hands trembled. "Because you're just a boy, and boys shouldn't be alone." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small old toy ball. It was Leah's, painted with stars faded from time. "Here," Eli said softly. "My daughter loves this. Maybe you'll like it too." The prince's eyes widened. For a moment he hesitated. Then his claws slowly reached out. When they touched the ball, a strange light passed through the corridor, but nothing burned. Nothing broke. The boy's claws didn't melt the toy. His red eyes flickered with surprise, then wonder. He whispered, "It didn't burn." Eli chuckled. Maybe the stories were wrong. The prince looked up, his voice small. "Are you afraid of me?" Eli looked down at his sleeping daughter, then back at the boy. "No, you don't scare me. You just look like you need a friend." For the first time in his short life, the Dragon Prince smiled. It was a shy, trembling smile. But it made the blue fire on the torches glow warmer. Unseen by both of them, a surveillance drone floated nearby, recording every second. Red lights blinked, transmitting images directly to the palace security. The guards watching the feed gasped. "The human touched the prince," one shouted. "That's impossible. He should be dead," yelled another. Within minutes, alarms blared through the academy. Eli didn't understand what was happening. The prince's smile vanished. He looked terrified. "They saw," he whispered. "You shouldn't have done that. They'll punish you." Eli frowned. "For giving you a toy?" The prince's voice cracked. "No one is allowed near me. Mother said it's for their safety. And mine." Heavy footsteps thundered down the hall. Guards in golden armor appeared, their weapons drawn. Eli stood still, his daughter still asleep against his chest. The Dragon Prince took a step back, his eyes full of guilt. The lead guard pointed at Eli. "Human, step away from the royal child." Eli didn't move. "He's just a kid," he said calmly. The guards aimed their rifles. The prince's wings twitched. "Don't hurt him!" he cried, but Eli raised one hand. "It's okay, kid. Let me handle this." The torches flickered again and shadows danced across the floor. The corridor was silent, except for the heartbeat of a human father who refused to be afraid. And in that silence, the story that would change 2 worlds had just begun. The alarm still echoed through the golden halls of the academy. Guards rushed in from every direction, their heavy boots shaking the floor. The dragon prince Carthar stood frozen in shock, clutching the small ball Eli had given him. His silver-blue scales glimmered in the torchlight, reflecting fear more than pride. Eli didn't move. His daughter Leah was still asleep in the carrier on his chest. The guards surrounded him, their laser spears aimed at his head. One of them growled, "Human, drop what you're holding and step back." Eli looked confused. "I'm holding my child," he said quietly. His voice was calm but firm. He didn't look like a warrior, just a tired man who had seen too much and lost too much. Yet there was something in his eyes that made even the guards hesitate. "Don't hurt him," the dragon prince shouted suddenly. His voice echoed with hidden power. The flames in the torches wavered as if listening to him. "Your Highness, please move aside," one of the guards said. "This human has broken sacred law." He touched royal blood. The prince's small claws clenched around the toy. "He didn't mean harm," Carthar said. "He just gave me this." The guards exchanged uneasy glances. None of them dared argue with the prince directly. But the law was clear. Anyone who touched the royal heir without permission would face the queen's judgment. And that judgment was always death. Eli took a step forward, his eyes gentle. "I didn't know it was forbidden," he said softly. "I was just trying to be kind." One guard pressed a button on his wrist, opening a direct line to the throne chamber. "We've secured the intruder," he reported. "The queen must be informed." When the words "the queen" reached Carthar's ears, he paled. His wings folded tightly. "Mother will be angry," he whispered. "You should run." Eli shook his head. "Running teaches my daughter the wrong thing," he said. "We face what comes." The guards grabbed his arms roughly, tearing the cleaning badge from his uniform. Leah woke up and began to cry softly, her small voice echoing through the silent corridor. Carthar's eyes widened. He had never heard such a fragile sound before, a baby's cry. His entire life had been quiet, controlled, isolated. That small cry made his chest hurt. Eli tried to calm her, whispering, "It's okay, sweetheart. Daddy's here." His voice was steady, gentle, like sunlight through glass. The dragon prince stepped forward, ignoring the gasps of the guards. "Stop," he said. "Don't hurt them." The lead guard hesitated, lowering his weapon slightly. But then a new sound filled the corridor, a deep, mechanical hum. The temperature dropped. The golden doors at the end of the hall opened slowly, revealing a giant hologram of the Dragon Queen herself. Her image glowed in fire and mist. Her eyes were sharp as blades, her crown shaped like burning wings. The guards dropped to their knees instantly. "Your Majesty," they said in unison. Eli looked up at her image. Even though she wasn't physically there, her presence felt heavy, almost crushing. She looked down at him with cold curiosity. "So this is the human," she said, her voice calm but dangerous. "The one who touched my son." Eli swallowed. "I didn't mean to offend, Your Majesty. He was lonely." The queen's eyes flicked to her son. "Carthar, did he harm you?" The prince's claws shook. "No, mother, he gave me a toy. He spoke to me. No one ever does that." For the first time, the queen's expression changed. Just a flicker. Then she said, "Take the human to the lower cells. His trial will come at sunrise. Mother, please." Carthar cried. "He's not dangerous." The queen's image turned to him, her tone sharp. "Enough. You are too young to understand." Her eyes returned to Eli. "You should have stayed in your place, human." The hologram vanished, leaving a trail of heat behind. The guards began to drag Eli away. Leah started crying again, louder this time. The sound echoed through every corridor, even into the throne chamber far away. Some of the guards looked uneasy, but none dared disobey. Carthar ran after them. "Wait!" he shouted, his wings flaring. "Let me see him again." But they locked the gates before he could reach them. The metal door slammed shut with a hollow thud. Eli looked back through the bars. The prince stood there, holding the small toy ball against his chest. Their eyes met one last time. The prince whispered something that only Eli could hear. "I'll find you." And then the lights dimmed. The janitor and his child were gone, swallowed by the cold tunnels beneath the palace. That night, the academy returned to its false peace. But the story of the human who touched the prince spread like wildfire across the empire. Some called him foolish. Others called him brave, yet far away. In her throne room, The Dragon Queen sat in silence, staring at the paused recording of that forbidden moment, where a human, holding his baby, smiled at her son without fear. Her claws tightened. Something deep inside her, something she had buried long ago, began to stir. And in the shadows, young Prince Carthar prepared to break the greatest law of his kingdom, just to save the human who dared to be kind. The morning sky above the Dragon Palace burned red, the color of judgment. Soldiers stood in lines across the courtyard, their armor gleaming like molten metal. Everyone had heard the same rumor. The human janitor who touched the Dragon Queen's son was going to be judged today. Deep inside the royal hall, the queen sat upon her throne. Her eyes glowed faintly gold, her long wings folded like storm clouds behind her. Her power filled the room. No one dared to breathe too loud. The recording of the forbidden moment played before her again. Eli, the human, smiling softly while handing the toy ball to her son. She paused it just before the human spoke. His face looked tired but gentle. The queen's claws scraped the arm of her throne. "A human," she muttered. "Insolent, careless, touching royal blood." Her anger wasn't just about law, it was about fear. For years her son had been kept apart because of the unstable fire within him. The energy in his blood could destroy an entire hall if he lost control. She remembered the day her child's power burned his first caretaker to ash. Since then, she had forbidden anyone from touching him. But this human, nothing had happened. No fire, no curse, only calm. That truth scared her more than angered her. "Bring him in," she ordered. The doors opened with a heavy sound. Eli walked inside, chained, holding his daughter close. She had fallen asleep again, unaware of the soldier's cold eyes around her. He bowed his head slightly but didn't kneel. The hall was silent except for the faint hum of the queen's throne. The dragon prince Carthar stood beside his mother. His small claws were shaking, but he tried to stay still. His mother's gaze turned toward him. "Stand straight, my son," she said. "You are heir to the empire. You must not show weakness." "Yes, mother," he whispered. Then her attention shifted to Eli. "Human," she said coldly. "Do you understand what you have done?" Eli looked up, his voice calm. "I gave your son a toy. That's all." The soldiers gasped at his boldness. No one spoke to the queen that way. But the queen leaned forward, her golden eyes narrowing. "That act breaks the sacred law. You could have unleashed fire that would consume us all." Eli met her eyes. "Maybe the problem isn't the boy," he said softly. "Maybe the problem is that no one's ever treated him like one." A sharp hiss spread through the hall. The queen's tail moved slightly, cracking the marble floor. "You speak as if you know my child better than I do," she said. "I don't," Eli replied. "But I saw something you haven't." The queen rose from her throne. Her wings unfolded, stretching wide, filling the chamber with their shadow. "Enough," she thundered. "You defy me with your words. For touching the royal heir, you will face the fire trial at dusk." Carthar gasped. "Mother, no, please." The queen turned to him sharply. "Silence," she roared. "He broke our law." Tears filled Carthar's eyes. "But he was kind to me. He didn't run like the others. He wasn't afraid." The queen hesitated. That small sentence pierced her heart more deeply than any sword. For a second her expression softened, but only for a heartbeat. "Guards," she ordered, "remove the child from my sight." The soldiers took hold of Eli's chains. His daughter stirred in her sleep. As they dragged him away, he turned his head toward the prince. "Be strong, kid," he said quietly. "Don't let fear rule you." The queen's hand clenched. Her power flared, shaking the air. "Stop," she said suddenly. The guards froze. "Leave the child," she commanded. "Take only the human." Eli looked down at Leah. "Please," he said. "She's my daughter. She won't survive alone." But the queen's voice was cold again. "Humans must learn consequence." Carthar couldn't bear it anymore. He rushed forward and grabbed his mother's robe. "Please, mother, don't take his child away. He's the first person who looked at me like I mattered." The hall went completely silent. Even the fire from the torches seemed to wait for her response. The queen's expression broke just for a second. Behind her anger there was pain. She saw her own loneliness reflected in her son's trembling claws. But a queen could not show weakness before her court. "Take them both," she said finally. "They will wait for judgment together." As the guards pulled Eli away, Carthar's eyes followed him. Their gazes met again, Something passed between them, an understanding beyond words. When the doors closed, the queen sat back down slowly. The hall emptied, leaving her alone. She stared again at the frozen image on the screen, the moment the human smiled at her son. Her claws relaxed slightly. "Why didn't he burn?" she whispered. "Why not him?" For the first time in years, the Dragon Queen's certainty began to crack. Deep in her heart, something new flickered, something that felt almost like doubt. And far below, in the cold dungeon, a human father looked at his sleeping daughter and whispered, "We'll survive this no matter what." Up above, Carthar looked toward the dark stairs leading to the cells. He wiped his tears and whispered a promise of his own. "I'll save you, human." That night, the queen's wrath filled the palace. But somewhere beneath that fury, a spark of change had already begun to burn. The dungeon beneath the Dragon Palace was nothing like the shining halls above. It was made of black stone that seemed to drink in all light. The air was cold and heavy, and the silence carried a strange hum of energy, like the building itself was alive. In one of the lowest cells sat Eli, his wrists bound by glowing cuffs. His daughter Leah slept on his lap, her head resting against his chest. Hours had passed since the guards locked them in. From the cracks in the wall, Eli could hear the sound of roaring fires above, the queen's soldiers preparing the fire trial. He had heard whispers of it. A single test where the accused faced pure dragon flame. No human had ever survived. Eli gently brushed the hair from Leah's face. He whispered softly, "Don't worry, baby. Daddy's here." His voice was calm, but his mind raced. He had seen many terrible things in his life. Wars, hunger, loss, but never something this strange. A world of dragons ruled by pride and fear, now deciding his fate because he had shown kindness. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. "If this is how it ends," he murmured, "at least she'll know her father wasn't afraid." Then he heard footsteps, slow, cautious ones. The guards didn't move like that. Eli straightened up, ready to protect his daughter. From the shadows came a small voice. "Mr. Eli?" Eli blinked. The Dragon Prince stood at the bars, his silver-blue scales dimmed under the torchlight. His claws clutched a small tray of food. "You shouldn't be here," Eli whispered. "If your mother finds out, I don't care," Carthar interrupted, his voice trembling. "They said you'll be burned tomorrow." "That's not fair," Eli gave a tired smile. "Fair isn't something I've seen much of in this world, kid." The prince placed the tray near the bars and crouched down. "When I was born," he said softly, "my power hurt people. My mother locked me away to keep everyone safe. I thought I was cursed. But when you touched me, nothing happened. It was the first time I felt normal." Eli looked at him, eyes kind. "You're not cursed, Carthar. You just needed someone who wasn't afraid." The prince's eyes glowed faintly. "Then I'll help you. I'll tell Mother to stop the trial." Eli shook his head. "She won't listen. Queens listen to power, not words," Carthar frowned. "Then I'll give her power." Before Eli could ask what he meant, heavy boots echoed down the hall. The prince jumped back, hiding behind the wall. A guard appeared, slamming a staff against the bars. "Human, your time is near. The queen commands your presence at dawn." When the guard left, Carthar stepped out again, his claws shaking. "There's a tunnel behind the lower cells," he whispered. "It leads to the old forge. I'll unlock it tomorrow night." Eli looked at him with disbelief. "You'd betray your own laws for me?" Carthar's voice cracked. "You broke the law to be kind. I can break one to save you." Before Eli could respond, the boy was gone, vanishing into the darkness like a spark fading into smoke. The long night stretched on. Eli couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the queen, her eyes cold but not cruel. Maybe she wasn't truly heartless, just afraid of losing her son again. He thought about his own daughter, about the day he lost her mother. Fear had driven him once too. Maybe the queen wasn't so different after all. As dawn approached, the guards came again. They took him up through the winding halls, their armor clinking in rhythm. The crowd had gathered in the courtyard, dragons of all ranks watching from the towers. The fire trial pit burned in the center, glowing bright as a sun. The queen stood before it, majestic and terrible. Beside her, the young prince looked pale and nervous. "Eli of Earth," the queen declared, her voice echoing across the palace. "You are charged with defying royal law. Do you have any final words?" Eli stepped forward slowly, holding his daughter close. "Yes," he said simply. "If kindness is a crime, then I accept it. Gasps rippled through the audience. The queen's eyes narrowed, but her voice wavered slightly. "You face the flame." The pit roared to life. The crowd leaned forward. The heat washed over the stones, blinding and fierce. Eli closed his eyes, shielding Leah with his body. But before the fire could touch them, a deafening roar filled the air, coming not from the pit but from above. The dragon prince had spread his wings wide, glowing brighter than the sun. His energy exploded, surrounding Eli and his daughter in a silver-blue shield. "Enough," Carthar shouted. "If he burns, then so do I." The queen froze. The flames hesitated, dancing mid-air as if obeying her confusion. The entire court gasped. In that moment, something ancient and unbreakable passed between mother, son, and human. The queen's wrath trembled and cracked. For the first time in her reign, the fire of judgment refused to burn. The fire pit still glowed with heat when the queen's hand trembled ever so slightly. The flames that should have consumed the human had turned into harmless light. Around her, soldiers exchanged stunned glances, their faith in their queen's law shaken. Above the courtyard, the morning sky darkened, the sun fading behind gathering clouds. Carthar stood in front of Eli and Leah, his wings wide and his scales burning like molten silver. The boy's power pulsed through the air, but this time it didn't lash out wildly. It formed a barrier of light. The crowd made of dragons gasped. Never before had the prince's unstable fire obeyed him. The queen rose slowly, her eyes full of something she hadn't felt in years: doubt. Before she could speak, the ground rumbled. A deep vibration rolled through the palace, shaking pillars and cracking walls. From the horizon came a roar, a chorus of many dragons. The guards looked toward the sky. "Your Majesty," one cried. "Enemy fleet approaching from the east." The queen's eyes flared gold. "The Crimson Claws," she hissed. "They've broken the peace pact." Flames filled the heavens as dark shapes swooped down, dragons clad in crimson armor, their ships firing plasma bolts that tore through the palace walls. The fire trial ended in chaos. "Get the prince to safety," shouted the commander. But the prince didn't move. He turned toward Eli and Leah, who were still on the ground. "They'll kill you," Carthar said. Eli stood, shielding his daughter. "They're not the only ones who can fight for what's right." Before the prince could argue, the wall behind them exploded, showering sparks and stone. Enemy dragons crashed through the breach, their armor glowing red-hot. The queen unleashed a blast of golden fire, melting 3 of them instantly, but more kept coming. Eli grabbed the prince's arm. "We need to move now." The queen saw it. For a brief second, her heart clenched again. Watching her son trust a human more than her soldiers, she turned to her guards. "Protect them," she commanded, then spread her wings and launched herself into the sky, leading her army against the invaders. Inside the collapsing courtyard, Eli led the prince and Leah through smoke and falling debris. The little girl clung to her father's neck, crying softly. Carthar followed close behind, holding the small toy ball tightly. "The forge tunnels," he shouted. "They lead outside the city." They ran through the crumbling halls. Explosions echoed overhead. The golden walls, once symbols of pride, now burned red from fire and battle. At every turn, dead guards and fallen enemies littered the floor. A massive dragon soldier landed before them, his crimson armor cracking the tiles. "Royal traitor!" he roared, raising a plasma axe. Eli pushed Leah behind him. He had no weapons, no armor, only a broken cleaning rod he'd picked up from the ground. The soldier laughed at him. "A janitor?" Eli gripped the rod tight. "Yeah, a janitor who's not letting you touch these kids." The dragon swung. The impact sent sparks everywhere, but Eli ducked just in time and jabbed the rod into the creature's leg joint. The dragon roared, staggering back. Carthar raised his claws and unleashed a wave of silver flame that knocked the enemy through the wall. The shockwave rattled the corridor. Eli turned, panting. "Good shot, kid." Carthar smiled faintly, his eyes glowing. "You're not bad for a janitor." They kept running until they reached the lower forge. It was a vast, abandoned chamber filled with old machines and molten rivers of metal. The noise from above grew louder. The palace was falling. Eli looked around for an exit. "You sure this tunnel leads out?" Carthar nodded. "It should." But he stopped. Across the chamber, 3 enemy dragons appeared, dragging chains of glowing steel. Their leader sneered. The queen's brat and his human pet. "How touching." Eli stepped forward. "Stay behind me," the enemies charged. The fight was quick, desperate, and brutal. Eli fought with everything he had, swinging tools, dodging flames, using every ounce of strength to protect his child and the prince. Carthar's power flared again, uncontrollable this time. The heat grew unbearable. "Eli!" the boy cried. "Get back!" But Eli didn't move. He grabbed the boy's shoulders, looking straight into his glowing eyes. "You can control it. Focus on them, not your fear. You've got this." For a heartbeat, their gazes locked. Then Carthar screamed, not in pain, but in release. His flames burst forward, pure and silver white, engulfing the attackers but leaving Eli and Leah untouched. The heat faded, leaving nothing but silence. Eli fell to his knees, gasping. The prince stumbled forward, helping him stand. You believed I could do it," he said quietly. Eli smiled weakly. "I told you. You're not cursed, kid." Above them, the palace trembled again. The queen's voice echoed through the halls, commanding her army. The battle outside raged on, but in the forge below, a bond had been sealed stronger than fire. Carthar looked toward the tunnel ahead. "Come on, we have to reach Mother before they do." Eli picked up Leah and followed. Behind them, the forge burned brighter, lighting the path forward. A path where a human janitor, a dragon prince, and a sleeping child walked side by side through war, changing the fate of two worlds. The forge tunnel opened into a shattered courtyard filled with smoke and ash. Above, the once golden sky had turned dark red, lit by the burning remains of the dragon palace. The air stank of scorched metal and fear. Eli held Leah tightly against his chest. His face streaked with soot while Carthar limped beside him, his silver-blue scales cracked and smoking. The boy's energy flickered weakly. He had burned almost everything he had to protect them. "Keep moving," Eli said, voice rough from the heat. "We're almost there," but Carthar could barely walk. "I can't," he gasped. "The energy, it's too much." Eli stopped and knelt beside him. "Listen to me, kid. You saved lives back there. You proved you're more than your power. But right now you've got to hold on. Your mother's still fighting." The boy tried to stand. "Mother won't last long. The Crimson Claws are everywhere. They brought their warlord." His voice cracked on that word. "He hates her more than anyone." Eli didn't know who the warlord was, but the fear in Carthar's voice said enough. He looked toward the palace gates, giant arches now half destroyed. Beyond them, explosions flashed in the distance. Somewhere out there, the Dragon Queen fought alone. He took a deep breath. "Then we go help her." They pushed forward through smoke and rubble. Every few steps, Eli had to lift debris or drag the weakened prince to his feet. Leah whimpered softly, but Eli whispered comfort. "Almost there, baby. Almost there." Then, through the haze, they saw it, the central courtyard. The queen stood at the center, her golden wings torn, her armor cracked, surrounded by flames. Around her circled the Crimson Warlord, a massive dragon in blood-red scales, his eyes burning with hatred. "Your rule ends here, Queen of Fear," he bellowed. The queen's fire flared, but she was exhausted. She stumbled, and the warlord raised his claws for the final strike. "Mother!" Carthar screamed. The queen's eyes widened as her son appeared from the smoke, with a human and a small child at his side. "Carthar!" she cried, her voice breaking. The warlord sneered. The cursed child dare show his face? He turned his attention toward them, his mouth filling with flame. "Then I shall end your bloodline now." Eli felt his pulse stop. There was no time to think. He dropped the cleaning rod, threw his daughter's blanket over her, and ran forward, straight toward the warlord's fire. Carthar shouted, "No!" The warlord's jaws opened, unleashing a wave of burning plasma. Eli didn't stop. He turned his back to the blast, wrapping both arms around Leah and pulling Carthar in close. The fire hit him full force. The world went white. The ground cracked beneath them. Smoke filled the air. For a long moment, there was nothing but silence. When the flames finally died, the scene froze. The warlord stared in disbelief. Standing in the center of a scorched circle was Eli. On his knees, his uniform burned away, his arms still wrapped tightly around both children. The human was alive, barely. His back was blackened and smoking, but he was still breathing. He looked up weakly at the shocked warlord. "You'll have to go through me first," the warlord growled, furious. "Impossible!" "No human can," but he never finished. A blinding wave of silver-blue energy exploded outward from Carthar. The prince's scream tore through the air, filled with grief and rage. His wings unfolded, glowing like stars. The energy he had tried to control now erupted in pure form. But it wasn't wild or destructive this time. It was focused, controlled. The blast struck the warlord square in the chest, hurling him across the courtyard and into the burning wall. The explosion shook the ground, tearing the crimson armor apart. When the light faded, the enemy army began to retreat, their roars fading into the distance. The battle was over. Carthar fell to the ground beside Eli, tears streaming down his face. "You saved me again, why?" Eli smiled faintly, his voice barely a whisper. "Because that's what dads do." The queen landed beside them, her wings trembling. She looked down at the broken human, her golden eyes wet with something no one had ever seen. Tears. "You protected my son," she said quietly. "And your own." At the same time, Eli tried to sit up, but she stopped him with a gentle claw. "Rest, human," she said softly. "You've done more than any knight ever could." Carthar held Eli's hand. "Please don't die." "You can't die now." Eli smiled again, his vision fading. "Hey, kid. You're strong now. You don't need me anymore." Then his head fell back. For a long time, the courtyard was silent except for the sound of crackling fire and a child's soft sob. The Dragon Queen lifted her gaze to the sky. Above them, the storm clouds cleared and sunlight fell on the burned stones. She whispered, "No human will ever be forgotten in my realm again." And beside her, the Dragon Prince clutched the toy ball, the same one that had started it all, and swore an oath that would echo across the stars. The morning after the battle, the Dragon Palace stood in ruins. Smoke curled from broken towers and ashes drifted through the air like gray snow. But the war was over. The crimson banners of the enemy clan had fallen, and the roar of battle was replaced by the soft hum of rebuilding. In the heart of the shattered courtyard, a single banner of gold and silver fluttered weakly in the wind, the new emblem of peace. Beside it, the Dragon Queen stood silently, her armor dented, her crown melted at the edges. Her eyes, once sharp and cold, now held a depth of sorrow and gratitude that no dragon had ever seen before. Before her lay a small white stone platform, and upon it, resting peacefully, was Eli. His body was wrapped in silver cloth, the same material used for royal burials. The queen had ordered it herself. Around him stood her guards, healers, and nobles, all bowing their heads in silence. Beside Eli sat Leah, sleeping against her father's arm, her small hand still clutching his sleeve. And next to her was Carthar, the Dragon Prince, kneeling with his head bowed low. The queen looked up at the rising sun. "He was a janitor," she said softly, her voice echoing across the courtyard. "A man with no title, no weapon, no magic, yet he protected what my army could not." Her words carried far. The soldiers who had once feared humans now listened in silence. Carthar lifted his head. His eyes glowed faintly, but not with power, with emotion. "He wasn't afraid of me," he said. "He didn't see a monster. He saw a boy. He gave me something no one else ever did. Kindness." The queen closed her eyes, remembering the moment when Eli stood before the flames, shielding both her son and his own child. That image would never leave her. "He showed me," she whispered, "that courage isn't born from blood or strength. It's born from love." She turned to her council. "From this day, let the barriers between our species fall. Let no dragon or human call the other lesser." Her voice grew stronger, rising like thunder. "Eli of Earth shall be remembered as the Bridge of Fire, the human who burned himself to save both worlds." The soldiers bowed deeply. The declaration spread like wind through the city. Across the kingdom, dragons lowered their heads in respect to a human name for the first time in history. The queen stepped forward and knelt beside her son. She placed her claw gently on his shoulder. "You were right, my son. He wasn't dangerous. He was the reason we're still alive." Carthar looked up, tears streaming down his scaled cheeks. "I just wish he could see what he changed." The queen's gaze softened. "Perhaps he can." She raised her hand and a soft golden light surrounded Eli's body. The light didn't bring him back, it wasn't that kind of magic, but it preserved him, encasing him in a gentle aura, as if even death dared not touch his peace. Leah stirred awake and blinked. "Daddy?" she whispered. Carthar reached for her hand, his voice gentle. "He's sleeping, Leah, but he's watching us now, from the stars." The little girl rubbed her eyes. Is he happy? Carthar smiled sadly. Yes, because you and I are safe. The queen stood and looked out over her people. Build him a monument in the central square, she ordered. Not of gold, but of stone, simple and strong like the man himself. And beside it build a school, for dragon and human children alike. Let them learn together, play together, and never fear one another again. Weeks passed, the fires were extinguished. The ruins were rebuilt, and in the capital square, under the light of two suns, a statue was raised. Eli holding Leah in one arm, and resting his other hand on the shoulder of the young dragon prince. Beneath it, carved in both dragon runes and human letters, were the words, "He shielded two children and united two worlds." Every morning, Carthar came to the statue before his lessons. He left a small ball at its base, the same toy Eli had once handed him in that silent corridor. Leah, now living within the royal household, often joined him. She laughed and played among dragon hatchlings, no longer afraid, her laughter echoing through the marble halls. The queen watched them from her balcony. For the first time in her reign, she smiled, a real gentle smile. And when night fell, the stars above the dragon palace burned brighter than ever before. Some said they saw one star that glowed a little warmer, a little closer to Earth. The dragons began to call it the human's light. Every time someone looked up at it, they remembered the man who changed everything, not with power or might, but with the courage to care. And so the legend of Eli, the human janitor who made dragons bow, spread across galaxies. His story became a song, sung by children of both races, a tale that reminded them that even the smallest act of kindness can ignite a fire strong enough to melt fear. Itself, the Dragon Queen often repeated his final words to herself whenever doubt returned. You don't need power to be brave. You just need a heart that refuses to step back. And under the same sky, the worlds of dragons and humans move forward together, united by a father's shield, a child's love, and a single act of fearless humanity.